Hi, this is the second part of their lecture 5 Plant Growth and Development. This time we'll talk about plant movement. There are several kinds of plant movement, so for example, growth movement, trigger movement, sleep movement, or circadian rhythms. Solar tracking and plant movement can be divided into two types. Nastic movement is the movement that the direction of the movement is not determined by the signal. And on the other hand, the second type, tropic movement or tropism, is the movement of the plants that the direction of the movement is determined by the signal. I'd like to introduce you this website. In this website, you will have a lot of video about plant movement that you can look it up by yourself, but I will have some for you in this lecture. The first one, the growth movement, is the movement by from the results of internal stimuli. The first one is nutation. It's the movement in the spiral motion. It happens in the seedling that growing to search for light. For the second one, twining movement is the movement of plants that find in order to find a vertical support for the plants to climb up. The third one is the movement by contraction. These plants try to move the bulb, more like an onions, move the bulb down into the soil by the root that try to pull the bulb into the earth. Here I have example of nutation. These plants are seedling and they just move in circular motion to I think it's to find the light. The next video is about twining movement. You can see that the middle plants it twine or move in circular a lot, but once it find a bamboo stick on the right, it's continue wrapping itself around the pole. The left one also gonna find a pole very soon, and again it's wrap itself around the bamboo stick. Alright. The next one is the nastic movement. Is the direction of the movements is independent of signal direction. Is caused by growth or change in turgor pressure. Example is photonastic movement is the closing of the leaf and opening during the day. This will it closing at the dusk and opening again in the dawn. The next one is thigmonastic movement. This one is the sensitive plants. It will close down the leaf when it's got some heat trigger or motion trigger. If you touch the plants, it will do the same thing. The third one is thermonastic movement. These flowers is a crocus flowers. The stigma is actually can be used to make the most expensive um, spice in the world. I just forget to the name of it, but anyway, the flowers will close when the temperature drop for 1 to 3 degrees Celsius to become closed like this. All right. Um, so move on to tropism. Tropism is the movement of the plants like from it triggered by external stimuli cause a permanent movement. The direction of the movement is dependent on signal direction. Tropic movement can be divided into three phases: perception, transduction, and asymmetric growth phases. In the first one, perception, the organ receives a greater stimulus on one side, and then one or more hormones become unevenly distributed across the organ, and that will cause a greater cell elongation on one side. There are two main tropic movements: phototropism, the movement in response to light; gravitropism, the movement in response to gravity. This is an example of phototropism. The corn seedling will move its seedling, the shoot, to the light source in the middle. I already played this video in the lab, and you can see that the plant start to move to the new light source. Phototropism is mediated by blue light, as we can see the spectrum of the white light from 400 nanometers to 700, and the absorbance is of the phototropin, which is the molecules that absorb the blue light. And here is the coleoptile at different light colors. After 90 minutes, only the one that incubated with the blue light can bend. So how it works? Actually, it's mediated by the hormone auxin. In normal growth with the light from the top, auxin produced from the shoot tip and also the young leaves will travel down toward the root, and once it hits the root, it coming up again at the skin, and this zone is the elongation zone. Once you take these plants and put it into a box with a hole and you shine the blue light from the hole, the auxin will redistribute it from equally concentration around the plants into the shaded side, and the shaded side, once it receives more auxin at the shoot, it will elongate it better than the illuminated side. So the result is you seeing the plants bending toward the light source. The next one is gravitoprism. In general, the root of the plants will grow toward the gravity from the earth in the soil. But once the plants got transported and then flipped into the horizontal position, um, here how it responds. The root tip will grow toward the direction of the the gravity, but the one that already grown up, they are not be able to bend itself. Only the younger part can do. Here is how it works. At the root tip, the plant has a cells called statocyte containing starch molecules. We call the starch molecule as startolith, which is actually enclosed in an organelle called amyloplast. It's a cousin of chloroplast, but it cannot do photosynthesis, but it can accumulate starch grain. Here at the root tip, in the vertical orientation, the starch granule is sediment at the bottom side of the plant cells, and you can see that these lines are actually endoplasmic reticulum, or ER. The pressure of the starch granule is uniform on ER, but once the root is actually horizontally orientated, the starch granule will fall down into the side of the cells, and that's create unequal pressure on an ER. Then the plants know that the direction of gravity have been changed, and where the lowest side of the plant is just where the starch grain are. So the plants can respond like this. As I said earlier, auxin from the top of the plants send down through the vascular tissue from the top to the bottom. Once it hit the root cap, the auxin will be redistributed around the, the root into the peripheral of the root like this. If it vertically oriented, the concentration of auxin around the root will be equally distributed. So the action of cells elongation will be equal all the size. But if the root have been flipped like horizontally orientated, the lower side of the root will receive more auxin. And if you remember, in the root, it responds to lower auxin concentration. If it gets too much auxin, the cells will stop elongated. So the upper side, which get just enough auxin concentration, will elongate it further or better than the lower side of the plants that receive too much of auxin. And this will create the gravitopism movement, that the plants will bend the root down to the newer direction of the gravity. You can see that statolith have changed the position, and you can notice the position of the cells. This one has the bottom at the bottom, and here the new bottom has formed. This side is the old bottom, and this side is the new bottom. And this process is just similar to the shoot, but the effect of auxin concentration that will determine which side of the plants will elongate it more. You can see it from this video. You can see that the lower side is curvier than the upper side. This is mean the lower side get more auxin, but the shoot responds to higher auxin concentration. So the lower side has the cells that elongated better than the upper side. And the shoot already has the cells like we call it start sheet. It works the same way as the statocyte in the root cap, and it also have a myeloblast in the cells. And these start sheet are actually wrapping around the vascular tissue. So we done with the plant's movement. I think I will post a new video about light. So see you in the next video.